And Ilia Topuria, one of the most sensational champions we've ever seen inside the octagon, facing Justin Gaethje, which I think is the absolute perfect matchup for him. Justin deserves it after the Paddy Pimblett fight. Ilia Topuria has been just a complete and total phenom. Ilia Topuria is a once-in-a-generational talent.
Ilia Topuria is one of those guys. Right now, the timing is right for him and Justin Gaethje.
Can't wait to see what happens at the White House lawn.
Should be explosive.
I don't know if we have ever seen a guy at 145 that punches like this dude. He hits like no one I've ever seen before. Conor McGregor had great power at 145. But Conor McGregor, I don't think had the skills that Ilia Topuria has. I was talking to some of the people in the back and they told me, he's like Triple G. And I agree. Remember, Triple G used to just start dudes early in his career. Topuria's like that. Topuria is that guy. He has that power to knock you out and do it in just absolutely devastating fashion. Because I never thought that anybody would be able to knock out Max Holloway.
So
yeah, that's why I just kind of went,
Yeah, and I was like, oh, okay, well, all right. And then, him fighting Ilia Topuria is probably one of the most technical, sound athletes that I've seen in mixed martial arts, meaning that his cadence of a rhythm when he boxes, when he hits pads, everything he does is like strategic, right? And so
it's also surgical. The precision is perfect. There's no telegraph. There's no openings.
Yeah.
He sets things up.
Yeah.
The timing is ridiculous.
Yep.
And then, of course, combine that with the power that he has. I mean, one shot is truly all it takes.
Yeah, and, Ilia Topuria can take a shot. And there's me talking to Justin Gaethje about that. So when I talked to him about that, I never want to give... I feel like every athlete has a high.
And standing opposite you is Justin Gaethje, obviously one of the most, maybe the most exciting fighter that has ever stepped into the UFC octagon. What are you expecting from Justin? How can you possibly prepare for someone where a lot of their opponents just don't look the same after fighting Justin?
One thing I know for a fact is that he never fought with someone like me. And the only thing that I want from Justin is for him to show up in the event and I'm gonna do the rest. You know what I mean?
I mean, look, if we're being honest about it, look, Ilia Topuria is the favorite against anybody other than maybe Islam Makhachev right now, and I think that would be a great fight. But I mean, we've seen the run that he's on, the skills he's capable of. He's the favorite here for a reason. If there is somebody, because I don't think you want to outpoint Ilia Topuria over 5 rounds. No. You know what I mean? I don't know, and I think people forget how good his grappling is too. So you might be like, we've seen how great his striking is. You may say, oh, well, what if you had a real dominant wrestler? Like, he's a pretty good grappler too.
Well, if last night didn't send you a reminder of that, what he was able to do to Max and what Charles couldn't do to him.
100%,
holy cow.
Right? So I think what you want is somebody that can walk into a battle, take some shots, keep moving forward, and maybe land that big one. Mm-hmm. That's Justin Gaethje.
Justin Gaethje can do it.
That's Justin Gaethje in a nutshell. Now, I think most people and experts ahead of it will be picking Ilia Topuria, but that's again why I think this.
Ilia Topuria versus Justin Gaethje.
I got Ilia Topuria knocking him out after you've been dropped so much, and you're gonna fight somebody who's a fucking deadly striker, great wrestler, who has a chin, who's willing to put himself in the fire to land that shot. Let's not forget about Ilia Topuria's body work as well. What is Justin gonna do?
He's in a banging main event. Look at there's odds out already. And it's crazy, these odds. They still have Justin at like a 4-1 underdog? Which is, what was Justin his last fight? He was what is it, a 3-1 underdog, their last fight? Something crazy like that. He was the underdog. Justin Gaethje was the underdog. So, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, these whoever the odds makers are or whatever, I just feel like, the disrespect is there. I mean, even myself, I was an underdog in my fight. The disrespect is there, but it is what it is. That's what we love to do as professional athletes. We like to go in there and we like to really.
What do you think of Justin against Ilia now? Do you give him much of a chance there? A lot of people seem to be doubting him a lot already.
It is tough. I think Justin Gaethje is more technical versus a more technical opponent. Paddy has this very unpredictable, herky-jerky, kind of awkward, weird style, which I think lends itself to both guys fighting a little bit more sloppy or a little bit more sporadic or chaotic than they normally would. You know, you go back and watch Gaethje versus Poirier, Gaethje versus myself, Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson, kind of very similar movements. He can put on a lot more of a technical performance. With that being said, Ilia Topuria is easily the most talented and most dangerous guy in the entirety of the UFC. It's going to be a tall task.
The combat sports world has been buzzing nonstop ever since the announcement dropped that Ilia Topuria would be sharing the cage with Justin Gaethje at the historic White House card. This isn't the kind of booking that gets made by accident, and it definitely isn't the kind of fight that any sane champion would accept without doing some serious soul-searching first. Topuria knows exactly what he's walking into, and that's part of what makes the whole thing so fascinating to watch unfold from the outside looking in. The matchup carries weight beyond just the names involved, because it represents two completely different generations of fighters colliding at the absolute peak of their abilities. Gaethje has been around the block more times than anyone can count, and he's left a trail of bodies behind him in nearly every fight he's ever signed up for. He doesn't believe in jabs, he doesn't believe in feeling people out, and he certainly doesn't believe in letting fights go to the judges if he has any say in the matter. His whole philosophy revolves around walking forward, eating whatever comes back at him, and throwing until the man across from him stops moving. That mentality has won him fans all over the world, and it's also cost him some serious damage along the way, but he's never once apologized for the way he fights. Topuria represents something different entirely, almost like a new breed of fighter that the lightweight division hasn't quite figured out how to deal with yet. His hands move like they belong to a seasoned boxer rather than a mixed martial artist, and his power has shocked even the people who trained with him for years before he became a household name. He picks his shots, he reads his opponents in real time, and he throws combinations that look choreographed because of how clean they land. The contrast between these two approaches is exactly why the betting lines have been moving back and forth ever since the fight was announced. Some people see Gaethje's pressure overwhelming a younger fighter who hasn't been tested in deep waters yet, and others see Topuria's precision picking apart a veteran who has taken too many shots over too many years. Both arguments hold water depending on how you frame them, and that's why every analyst with a microphone has been weighing in on this one for weeks. Let's get into what the people closest to the sport have been saying about how this collision course might end once the cage closes and the referee finally calls for action. The press conference earlier this week gave fans their first real look at how both fighters are approaching this monumental occasion, and the contrast between the two men couldn't have been more obvious if it had been scripted. Justin Gaethje arrived at the venue with the kind of grin on his face that told everyone in the room he was right where he wanted to be. He soaked in the atmosphere, he greeted the cameras with the same enthusiasm he brings to Fight Week every single time he competes, and he made it clear from the first question that this booking means something special to him on a personal level. Fighting at the White House isn't just another paycheck for a guy like Gaethje, it's a chance to write his name into a chapter of the sport that nobody will ever forget. He talked about the honor of being part of such a historic night, but he also reminded everyone that history doesn't win fights, and ceremony doesn't stop punches from landing. What stood out most about his answers was the level of respect he showed toward Topuria, which was something a lot of reporters weren't entirely expecting, given how Gaethje usually carries himself in the lead up to a fight. He didn't trash talk, he didn't try to get under anyone's skin, and he didn't play the usual mind games that veterans tend to fall back on when they're facing a younger opponent with momentum. Instead, he spoke about Topuria the same way you'd speak about somebody you've been studying tape on for months, which is exactly what he's been doing in his camp. Gaethje openly placed Topuria among the very best opponents he has ever signed contracts to share a cage with, mentioning that the only fighter who presented a more difficult puzzle for him over the course of his career was Khabib Nurmagomedov himself. That kind of statement coming from someone who has fought through absolute wars with the likes of Tony Ferguson, Dustin Poirier, Eddie Alvarez, and Max Holloway carries enormous weight in the analyst community. It tells you that Gaethje isn't dismissing what Topuria has accomplished, and it tells you that he's been doing his homework in ways that don't always show up in interviews. Still, none of that respect is going to change how Justin approaches the actual fight itself. He made it crystal clear that when the cage door closes, he becomes the same fighter he's always been. He's coming forward, he's planting his feet, and he's swinging until either his opponent goes down or he does. There's no plan B with Gaethje, and there never has been. Ilia Topuria approached his media obligations with a completely completely different energy than the man he's about to share the cage with. While Gaethje brought warmth and excitement to his portion of the press conference, Topuria carried himself with the kind of cold focus that almost felt out of place given how loud and chaotic the rest of the room was. He answered every question slowly and deliberately, like he was measuring each word before letting it out into the world. There's something about the way he handles himself in these settings that makes opponents nervous without him ever raising his voice or making a single threat. He doesn't need to perform for the cameras, and he doesn't need anyone in the building to believe in him, because he believes in himself in a way that borders on unsettling. When the questions turned to Gaethje, Topuria didn't dismiss him or try to play down what the American has accomplished over the years. He gave credit where it was due, acknowledging that Gaethje has been part of some of the most memorable fights in the history of the lightweight division, and that any fighter who steps into the cage with him has to be prepared for absolute war from the opening bell. He spoke about Gaethje's heart, his power, and his ability to drag opponents into deep waters that not everybody can survive. But then came the part that made the whole room go quiet for a moment. Topuria leaned slightly forward, looked directly into the cameras, and said that none of that history matters because Gaethje has never faced a fighter operating at the level Topuria currently operates at. He explained that the lightweight division has never seen the version of him that's about to walk into that cage on fight night, and that this matchup is going to serve as a public demonstration of exactly how far ahead of his peers he believes himself to be. It wasn't said with anger, it wasn't said with any kind of theatrical flair, and it wasn't even said particularly loudly. That's what made it land the way it did. Topuria has a way of stating his confidence as if it were a basic fact about the universe, and people who watch him long enough start to wonder if maybe he's right about that. Everything about this fight points toward a war that fans are going to be talking about for years after the final bell rings. Topuria has been climbing through the rankings like a man on a mission, leaving former champions in his wake without breaking much of a sweat in the process. He dethroned Alexander Volkanovski in dominant fashion. He picked apart Max Holloway in a way that nobody really thought was possible, and he made every single one of those performances look like routine work for him. There's something almost unfair about how comfortable he looks under the brightest lights of the sport, and that level of composure at this stage of his career is part of what makes him so terrifying to book opponents against. Gaethje has built his entire legacy on a foundation that nobody else in the sport can really replicate, because nobody else is willing to take the kind of damage he takes in exchange for the finishes he delivers. He has more fight of the night bonuses than most fighters have professional bouts, and he's never once been involved in a contest that fans wanted their money back from. His resume reads like a highlight reel of the most violent moments in lightweight history, and he's not the type of athlete who's going to suddenly start playing things safe just because he's getting older or because the stakes happen to be higher than usual. When you put two finishers like this in the same cage on the same night, the only thing that becomes truly impossible is the idea that the fight goes the full 25 minutes. Somebody is going down before the final round, and the only real question is which one of them gets their hand raised when the dust finally settles. This is the kind of matchup that defines eras, the kind that ends up at the top of every retrospective list 10 years from now, and the kind that justifies every wild promise the sport has ever made to its fans about delivering moments that nothing else in entertainment can match. Now it's your turn to weigh in on the conversation. Who do you see standing tall when the referee steps between them at the end of the night? Are you backing the cold precision and unstoppable rise of Topuria, or are you putting your money on the heart, the power, and the proven warrior spirit of Gaethje? Let us know your prediction down in the comments section. Smash that like button if you enjoyed the breakdown, and hit subscribe so you stay locked in for every fight analysis we drop heading into this historic card.